The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shepard Smith, Head of Marketing here at Gravitate, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. The topic of today's conversation is data analytics for senior association executives. And while we have a lot to discuss in the next 30 minutes, we welcome questions and invite you to submit them at any time using the written chat function on the right-hand side of your screen. Everyone in the audience is muted. We'll be sending all of you a link to a recording of this webinar afterwards. We have two presenters today, Rob Miller and Brandon Royson. Rob is a CAE who many of you know both as a senior association executive at the trade association 340B Health and as president and co-founder of Vectra, the company that invented the modern web-based AMS with the launch of NetForum. Brandon is a subject matter expert who's been focusing on associations and analytics since 2010 and discusses data analytics with member industry professionals every single day. Rob, I'll now turn the presentation over to you.
Thanks, Shepard, and welcome everyone. This first slide I have, data analytics for everyone, is really our philosophy here at Gravitate. Our goal is that for your entire staff to be able to use the system without having to go to your IT department for help. That means going from your most junior membership coordinator to the executives on the call today. How do we do that? Well, we really focus on the design of the system with the goal of making it easy to use. For example, we use responsive design so that the system can run on your desktop, on a tablet, or your phone. And of course, that's very valuable for those of you who travel to your annual meeting and your board meeting, where you're probably regularly being asked how many members or what are the latest registration numbers. It's wonderful to have that at your disposal. And we pull all the data from all your data sources, your AMS, your email marketing tool, your private social community, your LMS, and then we blend that data together. And the result of that are brilliant visualizations with answers to key questions. I wanted to provide you some thought leadership from some very smart people as it relates to data analytics. And we pulled a few of our favorites here. These ones on this first slide are rather prophetic. The experts generally agree that just the act of measuring is the key to driving progress and success. And why is that? Well, I think we could all agree that measuring certainly allows for goal setting, but more importantly, it probably creates alignment with your staff around priorities and initiatives. The second slide of experts on data analytics are less prophetic and really more focused on the operations and how the value of the data provides value to an organization. Many people believe that the data itself is more important than many other organizational assets. And I like to say that information about a transaction is more important than the transaction itself. And think about that for a second. When a transaction takes place, such as a registration for a webinar, maybe for $50, certainly you're getting the $50, but what you're also learning is you're learning what content that individual is interested in. You might be learning what device they're running to access that webinar. You're understanding what time they're reading your messages. You're understanding what emails you're clicking on. There's a lot of data that's being generated around that simple transaction, which is why I think we're at a point where the information about it is more important than the transaction itself. So we did some recent analysis ourselves, and we measured some data that goes across all of our clients in our Nucleus data analytics solution, and we learned that on average less than 20% of an organization's data actually comes from their AMS. I was actually astonished when I saw that, and I looked at my old organization's their particular instance and saw that their data, AMS data, was as low as 7 or 8%. Which meant that there's a lot of other data that we had that was critically important. And if you're not tapping into that data, this data that's getting created in your email system and your private community and your LMS, that you're really not analyzing everything you have that's important that your members are doing. So this brings us to the concept of data blending. what you really want to do is you want to be pulling data from all your main data sources. And in this simple example, I have data coming from an AMS, an e-marketing tool, a social community, and a website. And each one of those is bringing valuable pieces of information. And so once you have that data blended together, you then can ask the data questions across all that data. Suddenly, whether somebody posted a message and whether they're a member can be, those questions can be asked together, which they can't be when the data is separated. We also do things such as transpose data. We'll take the join date and turn it into tenure. That makes it very easy for someone on your team to say, just give me all the individuals who have a tenure of 0 to 3 years. Would be much more difficult if you have to play with the dates. Same with age, we like to put the data in generations so you can just study the millennials or just study the baby boomers when you're looking at all the other data. And then one of the ones that's most common that people struggle with is member type. I'm sure when you walk around your organization and ask people how many members you have, you probably get lots of answers. And that's because in your AMS system, you have to indicate, regular member, a member status of active. You have to make sure that they've paid or they're within the grace period. There's a lot of rules that go into who makes a member. And when we bring the data into our data analytics solution, we make sure we just bring it in as member yes, no. So everyone in the organization, including all the executive teams, can really be highlighting just the member data. So where do we put all that data? Well, we put it in something called a data lake, which is a very modern, large database technology. It handles structured and unstructured data, which means text and numbers. It's an extremely flexible and agile technology, so it can handle unanticipated future use cases. And most importantly, it's built to be super fast. So when you're looking at volumes and volumes of data, you're still going to be able to get at the data you really need. So where does that data come from? Well, it comes from all of your source systems. We've integrated to well over 30 different platforms. Probably many of these are the systems that you are running, the most popular ones in the market, and we're always adding new ones. We have a team of engineers who's building integrations all the time, but once we have it, we can get that data into our system, blend it together, and then it becomes very valuable. Next thing I want to do is just hit on a few examples. So once you have the data blended together in the system, there's a bunch of different things you can do. At my old organization, the 340B Health, we were really focused on member engagement. And by blending the data together and scoring, so we were even scoring, email clicks and posts to our community, we started to get some real great insights. We were able to identify who our least engaged members were. Well, those are clearly your retention challenges, and it made it very easy for us to figure out who the executives needed to call to make sure we didn't lose any of our hospital members. We also got the most engaged non-members. And boy, was that ideal for our membership team for their acquisition targets. And we even had a surprise insight. We realized the data was very valuable for identifying new board members because the individuals with the high engagement score were great choices for our board. Continuing with another example, when you look at conference registration, one of the nice things that people like to look at is weeks out. But weeks out by itself is somewhat interesting, but when you start overlaying it with the capabilities to say how long someone's been a member, or what generation they're in, or what gender they are, or some other important criteria at your organization, because the data is blended now, you can do that. And in this particular case, with one client we had, they were able to clearly understand that their newest members, those 0 to 4 category, had very different content interests than those with more tenure. And so what they did is they started offering them different content to their webinars and their sessions at their conference, and they really drove up those numbers. And then we come to the granddaddy of them all for the executives, of course, which are really the key performance indicators. And those are where you're really looking at how all the data adds up. Oftentimes we'll have these performance metrics for each of the main sections, whether it's membership or conferences or advocacy, but then we like to take the best of the best and provide those to the executives. And obviously what you get with those is you get the progress against the objectives, and then you get successes compared to prior years. So it's just really great numbers to really be able to perform. The last thing I wanted to mention before I turn it over to Brandon to give you a little bit of show and tell the software is that there's also another opportunity. You know, after you've really been successful at providing analytics for your staff and for your executive team, you have an opportunity to push those analytics to your members. So in this case, you can see this is an example. We're pulling data from 4 different systems, pulling it in the data lake, and then we're pushing it up to a website and a mobile app. And we've had a client who did this, and then they actually were able to charge their members for access to that information because it's up to date, it's fully blended, and it has filtering for them to really dig in. So there's maybe a revenue opportunity out there for you that you don't know of, that when you start implementing this kind of software, you can really make progress. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brandon. He's going to go into some real client sites and show you some examples of what you can do as an executive using the system, and then we'll have a few questions at the end.
Great. Thanks, Rob. So just give me 1 second here, guys. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the site here. Okay. So where I want to start is basically by talking about the way that our system works. So the way Nucleus works is that it is a website. So it's a URL you go to, you log in. The first screen that you're going to see is going to look something like what you see here. And basically the way it works is up here in the top left of the screen is our main navigation button. And this opens up what we call carousels within Nucleus. But these are just really the different subject areas, the different business lines, the different ways that our clients are choosing to organize their analytics in Nucleus. And so what I'm going to be walking you through today are a number of those different areas, starting with membership. So when we take a look at it from the membership perspective, you can think of this as a dashboard or a carousel that a membership director might put together and utilize with their staff, so that you can get a 360-degree view of what's going on across your membership database. So when you look at the screen here, the first thing that you're going to notice are what we call data cards. Those are these 3 cards that you see here. And they are designed to be the highest level of analytics here within Nucleus. So they're typically simple question, simple answer type of scenario. And as we move across the different business units, the different business areas, you're going to notice that there are KPIs for each of them. So for this organization, they have their dues revenue goal and their total members goal right here front and center as soon as they log into their membership carousel. The next thing you'll notice is that the reason it's called a carousel is as we go around and scroll to the right, you're going to start to see more pieces of information that were important for this client to be able to analyze. So one thing I like to point out here is that we do have a solid baseline of visualizations that we've seen be most successful for the clients that we've implemented so far. But Nucleus is 100% configurable. So if there are unique things for your organization that you need to account for, whether it's at this highest level or as we dive down deeper into the cards, we can certainly configure that for you. The next thing I like to point out here too is that, the card that we'll see here in the center is the total number of members that this organization has. And so, the reason I like to point this out is because, as Rob mentioned in his PowerPoint, sometimes calculating or figuring out the total number of members that you have can be harder than it seems, right? So this is where that processing pipeline, the formulas, the logic, the algorithms that are embedded behind the scenes within Nucleus are automatically outputting the correct information for you here, so that you don't need to be manually running any of those processes yourselves. So as we kind of scroll through the cards here, you will notice that each of them has an explore link down here at the bottom of the screen. And what this allows me to do is dive down deeper into the particular data point that I'm looking at. So for instance here, if I look at the total members and I click explore, it's going to bring me into a page where I'm now able to start to see a deeper dive and breakdown of that membership count. So here at the top of the screen, you will see total members by years of experience, total members by clinical research focus. So this is a research organization. And you're basically going to be able to mouse over the live visualizations here where you can see I've got 3,863 members with less than 2 years of experience, as that profession. The next thing that you'll notice is that over here on the right-hand side of the screen are filters that we're able to start filtering these visualizations by. And so this is where your staff is going to be able to log in and start taking a deeper dive into your membership, so that if they're looking to segment or group their members, maybe for a campaign or for something like that, right? This is where they're going to be able to do that, so that if you wanted to come in here and only look at a particular member type, or only look at people who work in a particular practice setting, you would go ahead and check that off. It's going to update the visualization for you here on the left-hand side of the screen. And now I'm looking at people who have a clinical study site practice setting, and only those people. The next thing here that I will mention is that at any point in time when you're working in Nucleus, you do have access to the data table that's making up the visualizations above. So if I go ahead and open up the data table, I'm going to be able to see all of the members that I'm now filtering on. You can see all the information that I have saved about them. Sorry about that. Saved about them across all the systems that we're pulling data into Nucleus from. So this is where, if you wanted to find out all the information you have about one member, you could come to find it. You can download this into CSV or JSON if you're more of a data analyst type role, and use it externally if you need to as well. Okay. So that's kind of a quick overview of how the navigation works. Now, as we're taking a look at the membership carousel here that this organization uses, we're going to start to see things like year-over-year dues revenue by month, membership trends. So we're taking a look at their member counts and tracking the trends of how things are growing or shrinking over a span of time. And I'm not going to explore down deeper into each of these. If you do have questions or you want to go through each individual card, you can always follow up with us later, and I'd be happy to do that with you. But you'll see, a number of things as we kind of scroll to the right, okay, including joins and rejoins, and then some more KPIs or some more goals that we're looking at over here on the left and in the center of the screen. The last visualization that I do want to explore down deeper into is this member retention visualization here within the membership carousel. And basically what I like to show here is that here we're able to calculate retention again by any of those filters that we want to take a look at. So we want to look at our membership overall, if we want to filter by a particular practice setting or a primary role, so we can start to see how effective we are in retaining different subsets of our membership. Okay. So that is the first example. The next one that I will go to, oops, sorry about that, is around events. So just give me 1 second. I'll pull it up here. So this is something also that Rob kind of highlighted a little bit within his PowerPoint. But again, we're going to take a look at an organization that has this clinical informatics conference. And you'll see when we look at their carousels, it's one of their annual events that they run. And we can take a look into and a deeper dive into the data there. And so here you will see that they are at 132.4% of their goal this year, which is great. You're also going to notice that there are things like registrants over the last 3 years, which is showing us the total number of registrants that are coming in. And as you see, it's growing, as well as from a revenue perspective. And again, there are also more visualizations as we scroll to the right that are important for this client to be able to analyze, things like geography or by sessions. Those are all things that you can take a look at here within Nucleus. What I want to show you is the pace chart or the weeks out chart. So that's underneath this particular visualization here when I click explore. And so basically, when we dive down into this one, we're going to see that same screenshot that we saw in the PowerPoint, and this is the screen that it came from. And down here at the bottom of the screen, 0 is where the event takes place, and 13 is 13 weeks out from the event. And we're basically just tracking year-over-year registrations as they come in, for this particular event. I do have a slider where I can go ahead and adjust how many weeks I'm looking at if I want to go ahead and adjust that. Now, one of the key things that I like to mention here is that what this organization did is that they used their membership data, right? So figuring out what other pieces of information do we know about our members in order to engage with them more effectively. And they already knew that their members in 0 to 4 years of tenure were the least likely to renew, the least likely to engage with them. And so they had a particular goal of reaching those members. The next thing that they did is that they also brought in their information from their community. So they use Higher Logic, and they brought in information there, which then allowed them to mingle that information with their membership information. So now all of a sudden in the community and within Nucleus, we're able to start being able to see what exactly are members in 0 to 4 years of tenure talking about, what are they interested in, what are the things that we should be communicating to them about. And so through doing that, they were able to start reorganizing their session content, the email campaigns that they send to their members in 0 to 4 years of tenure, and they saw a lot of growth. And so they saw an increase in retention of about 12% for that particular subset of members. But one of the really cool things is it also started, moving over into other business lines too. So when I look at my length of membership and I adjust my registration filter here to only look at the registrants in 0 to 4 years of tenure, right? And I mouse over down here at the bottom of the screen, I can see I've had one registrant in 0 to 4 years of tenure come in 2014, and in 2019 I've got 223, which is exponential growth and pretty cool, and one of the stories that I like to share here. Right, so I'm going to move quickly on to the next one. So the next one has to do with donations, and so this is an organization that is pretty much almost solely donation based, and so they have a lot of donations coming in every year. And one of the things that I just wanted to show you quickly here is that you're able to take a look at donations by each of their individual programs. They can also take a look at the donors themselves, so looking at the transaction versus the actual human who donated. And here you're going to see on the screen donations top 5 states, and if we scroll to the right, we'll also see some congressional district breakdowns. So there are a number of different ways that they could go ahead and start organizing this and analyzing it. And if I go into my donations by program, for instance, again, there are all these filters that I'm now able to take advantage of over here on the right-hand side of the screen. So that if I wanted to filter by a particular campaign or a particular appeal, right, I can go ahead and do that. I could also maybe take a look at female millennials who've donated in the past, so that if there's a campaign that I want to send out to try and get them to donate again, that's something that I could figure out here within the tool. Okay, so that's from the donations perspective here. So the next one then is let's move into some email marketing. All right, so here again, we are going to see some KPIs or some goals, and this is for a kind of two ongoing campaigns that are going out over the course of the year. And basically here you're going to see, how they're performing against open rates that they wanted to have for those 2 particular campaigns. Now, as we scroll to the right again, we're going to start to see more pieces of information. In this recent mailings card, we're able to dive down deeper into any particular campaign that's gone out. Figure out, how many millennials, how many 0 to 4 years of tenure, how many people in this persona clicked and went through and purchased as a result of receiving that particular email. But one thing I do want to show you here, which I think is really informative, is that under this total sent of last 3 months here, when we click Explore, basically what's going to allow me to do is from an association or organization standpoint, it's going to allow me to see how many messages I'm actually sending to my members per month. And so the chart takes a little bit of explaining to have it make sense here, but at the bottom of the screen, you're going to see 1 all the way up to 48, right? And so this is the number of messages that were sent in a particular month, and you see all the months over, up here at the top of the screen. So you would just click to go back, so on and so forth, right? If you look at this 48 here and you mouse over it, you're going to see that there's 58 recipients. And so basically what this means is that there are 58 members that receive 48 email messages from this organization in the month of October. And so essentially it's allowing them to kind of gauge email fatigue, right? So how many messages are we actually sending to our members in any given month? Who's sending them? Where are they coming from? What's the topic? And allowing you to kind of move effectively across all the different departments and people who are trying to communicate with your membership base. Okay. So then as we kind of move on here, the last one I want to show you is just a overall key performance indicator carousel. And basically what this is going to show us is so we've taken those gauges or those goals from across the different business units, and we put them all into one screen here so that as an executive or as a board member, you can log in and kind of get an overall picture of the organization's health. And so here you're going to see, for instance, this organization's members goal, their corporate members goal. This is the 3rd type of member that they work with here. And those are all in blue. So anything membership related is blue for this organization. Same here, academic for members. As we kind of scroll to the right, again, we're going to see those email marketing goals that we just talked about. So here you'll see each of those particular goals on the screen. And then lastly, when we move to the right, anything that's in purple is an events goal. So here we see, each of the goals for their 2019 events and how many registrants they were able to capture as a part of them. And so there is just one last thing that I want to go ahead and show you And that is kind of plays into the revenue opportunity that Rob mentioned in his PowerPoint presentation. And so this is something that we call total member value. But basically what it is a way for you to display to your members the value that they get out of being a member of your organization. And so essentially what we're doing is we're taking all the activities that the members are doing with your organization and assigning them a value. So everything has either what we call a total open market value, which is here on the screen. And so essentially this is the cost, or this is the value of the items that you're getting as a part of being a member. And what we do is we compare that to the dues cost, as well as any out-of-pocket costs or total costs that might have come along, throughout the span of a year. And so basically, we're then able to take that and calculate a return on investment for being a member of your organization. And here you can see, in the filters area, this is a trade organization, so I'm able to filter by the particular organization itself. And so here you will be able to see each of the individual activities that takes place in any given year, the dollar value, the amount that's assigned to them, and you'd be able to display this externally on a website for your members to be able to log in and see exactly what they're getting, the benefits that they're getting out of being a member of your organization. And so I think that is it for me. I'm going to go ahead and switch it back over to Shepard and Rob and see if there are any questions. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Brandon. Thank you very much. And we've got a few questions, and we're still open to receiving more. First question up says, you talked about KPIs for the executive and the board. Is there a way for only executives to see certain things?
Yeah, sure. So we have role-based security in the system. In fact, it actually can be imported from your AMS, and what I see is that a lot of organizations will have departmental carousels, as Brandon showed you, and maybe that's the only part they can see. Then there'll be an executive carousel just for the executive team to look at. And then finally, we've even had some organizations that have created a subset of that executive dashboard that they let their board members to access. And because of the way that our licensing model works at Gravitate, it doesn't matter how many people you have connect to the system. They can all see the data. They're given a user account, but you don't have to pay extra for your board or your executives to use the system. So it all works together very nicely.
Thank you, Rob. Question number 2 says, our email system and Google Analytics create quite a bit of data. Will that be a problem for the system, and is there a cost implication?
That's a great question. So, first of all, we encourage, as you probably got from my original discussion that I was talking about, was that pulling data from these other systems is super valuable. So we want you to blend those together, and this is the reason why we went with this kind of modern big data type to support this data lake, to support all this data, because we didn't want to have challenges that you would have in a SQL-based database with this massive amounts of data. So to answer your question, absolutely it's not an issue. Bring in as much data as you want. The system should continue to be very fast, and it doesn't change our pricing at all. So you can bring in as much data as you want.
Thanks, Rob. Question 3, how did you determine which visualizations come with Nucleus?
Well, so obviously we started off at the beginning building what we thought was best, but then your customers tell you what really is best, and so with their help, we've really defined our carousels per basically business area of the organization. So we have a carousel for membership and one for events and so forth and so on. And through work with our clients, they've kind of helped us understand whether you're a trade association or professional society, or what are the best data visualizations to present, and then that's what's become our baseline.
Thanks, Rob. The last question we have so far is, how much training will my staff need?
Well, I would have to say very little. Of course, I was a client before I joined Gravitate. I joined Gravitate in March, and so we used the system for about a year and a half before I left. And I would say most of our staff got a maximum of like maybe 30 minutes to 45 minutes of training. And as Brandon showed, there's not that many things you have to know. Once the data has been brought in and blended together, you know, it's that left menu to get to the carousels, and then once you get to the carousels, it's the right menu to filter the data. And there's not a heck of a lot more to know than that. So I saw my most junior membership and event coordinators using it, and I saw my most senior executives using it. So very little training is required. So I think that we've run out of time. I want to thank you for joining us today. While we've shown you some successful examples from clients using Nucleus to support their executive teams, every association is different, and we're here to help and to speak to you if you'd like. Please contact us, and we'll be happy to help you with whatever questions you have. As with all our webinars, we have recorded this session and we'll send it to you shortly. Please feel free to share with your colleagues. Please note, on November 21st at 2 p.m., we'll have our next webinar. It will be a special webinar with .org community, so please join us for that. Thanks again, and have a wonderful day.